I have no idea how to open a review about SuperHot. I could talk about its Kickstarter history, or the prototype, or even how games can try to be unique or artsy, but like playing SuperHot, you're just gonna want to skip all the talking and get straight into the shooting, so let's just do that. In SuperHot, you play as yourself, playing the SuperHot program given to you by a friend. That's right, a meta-as-hell story about playing a game, which is the title of the game within the game. In all honesty, it's not as cool as it sounds. In truth, SuperHot does a few cool tricks here and there with its story, especially at the end, but for the most part, you're just gonna want to skip it and get straight back to shooting people in bullet time. SuperHot is one of those stylized titles that substitutes real graphics with very basic polygonal shapes and characters. You fight the same enemies throughout the entire game, red guys, who only differentiate with what weapon they're holding. SuperHot's empty and almost soulless levels work for the story somewhat, but aren't much to look at. Except, the game's main mechanic makes it work so well. SuperHot's claim to fame is that time, and subsequently everything within the game, only move when you do. Seeing as the player can only take one hit, this turns an otherwise unfinished looking title into a hyper-stylized kill fest. Guns are in limited supply and usually have to be pilfered from enemies either by melee attacks or killing them otherwise. Objects litter the levels that the player can grab and toss at red guys, causing them to lose their weapon, letting the player catch it and immediately spray bullets. SuperHot is an insanely violent game if you couldn't tell, but it's the kind of action that is instantly satisfying. The graphics that initially fail to impress suddenly resonate as enemies brutally fall to pieces before fading away from existence, all without a drop of blood ever hitting the screen. The sound in SuperHot is imperative, not because there's an adrenaline-pumping soundtrack, well, in fact there's not really a pumping soundtrack or any music actually. SuperHot works as it should, time slows, no music to speak of. The SuperHot team likely knew from the get-go that composing music that would almost constantly be slowed down would become irritating. Ultimately, it's a good decision to have silence that is pierced only by broken glass or gunshots. And that's where the sound is so important. One hit means you have to restart the level over. So while time moves only when the player does, you have to be very aware of your surroundings. Headphones enhance the experience, allowing you to hear when bullets and red guys are behind you and allow you to plan accordingly. Plus,
SuperHot.
SuperHot quickly becomes a puzzle game just as much as it's a first-person shooter. The amount of strategy and reaction time makes SuperHot a strangely nerve-wracking experience. Each time the player is purposely outgunned and outmanned, with the only odd in your favor being the game's own version of the iconic bullet time as we talked about before. Levels are centered around action movie cliches, a bank heist gone wrong, shootout in a subway, sword fight in a museum, the usual. With this, SuperHot is able to bring a little bit of reason to the madness, all while continue to being exciting, intense, and fun. Up until it feels like you're getting your groove. Then the game yanks you out for these chat cutscenes. Even though you can skip them, usually, it just sucks to have the action broken up by this crap. I just don't care about addictions or viruses, just let me get back into it. And when it's not yanking you out for the chat rooms, you have to go through these non-levels that are supposed to move the story forward, but really just hinder the gameplay. Plus, they can't be skipped. That's the thing, SuperHot didn't need to tell this complex narrative. I get that releasing a game in 2016 without a story just seems ludicrous, but I would have been okay with that. But man, when it just lets you play, everything comes together so well. And as if doing moves in slow motion wasn't cool enough, the end of every level pieces together your actions in full speed, showing the mini action scene that you were able to craft. Also gotta love how the screen blasts one-liners during certain scenes and kills. It gives a sense of visual style and flair to the game that just makes you want to keep going. Alongside those replays is the ability to edit and upload each one to Killstagram, SuperHot's own site for replays. Good stuff. One thing I found was how much better SuperHot played with the controller, in particular, the Steam controller. Since time moves as you do, analog movements are key to making the mechanic work. Since you know a keyboard doesn't offer the fine-tuning and movement that a stick can, it's far easier to manipulate time with a controller. It's certainly not a requirement, but I personally enjoyed the whole game much more with the Steam controller and being able to aim and move as the game intended. Beyond the story getting in the way, there are later levels that nearly require memorization or, at minimum, knowing where the red guys are going to enter. The overwhelming aspect of the game's nature typically makes this work, but in some rare instances, it can be annoying. In truth, there's nothing inherently bad about the game, and really the gameplay itself. Outside of the story junk, of course. SuperHot is pretty short. The main campaign can be cleared within a couple hours at most, but with its strangely addictive nature and abundance of challenges and post-game content, that's not too big of a deal, so long as you're okay with playing the same levels again with just different restrictions. I mean, at least I don't mind it, but some people aren't going to like that it's got that $25 price tag for entry, one that is surprisingly high for an indie game. Again, those two come down to a mileage may vary sort of point, but it's something to keep in mind. To me though, they're pretty much moot points. SuperHot offers an eccentric and satisfying experience that you just don't get from most games. It's hard to really compare SuperHot to anything else, and that is a very good thing. Shooter fan or not, a fiery title like SuperHot can't be missed.